They say that if you visit the Grand Canyon, you must stay at the Hotel Monte Vista. So when my girlfriend and I found ourselves in Flagstaff, Arizona, we booked 2 nights at this historic hotel immediately. The lobby was grand with high ceilings and chandeliers. As we checked in, we were given 2 keys, one for our room and one for an old metal box that was going to be our safe. This was also where we were told the ghost stories, where the front desk clerk told us about the rocking chairs moving by themselves and the voices of children heard in the halls. He said that every night he gets a different look from the eyes in the paintings. And just before us, a couple had spent their first night and heard chains dragging metal moans in the middle of the night. Our room was beautiful, but there was no TV. It wasn't that it was unplugged or turned off. The plug was missing. Apparently, it was removed years ago so that nobody would disturb the spirits living in the walls. We joked that if we needed any entertainment, we could always try talking to ghosts. Then we left to go explore the town. As night fell, the wind picked up. A storm was coming. Back at the hotel, the staff had lit a fire in the lobby's stone fireplace. Soothing sounds filled the room, along with the scent of burning logs. Just then, a guest came running out of breath, breathlessly asking if anyone had seen a little girl in a Victorian nightgown. We all looked at each other, then back at the girl. She was gone. But later that night, we learned she wasn't the only spirit to appear. While exploring the hallways, I discovered an old wooden door propped open against the wall. It creaked ominously as it swayed slightly in the breeze from the vents, and I couldn't help but wonder what lay behind it. As I pushed the door open, a gust of wind slammed it shut. When I opened it again, I stepped into a dusty, cobweb-filled room with a single window looking out onto the grounds. It was empty except for a large, ornate mirror hanging above the fireplace. I noticed a flicker of movement in the glass. Turning slowly, I saw a little girl standing behind me. Her white dress billowed around her ankles like she was floating. Suddenly, a man's voice boomed, "Who's there?" Startled, I whirled around to see a tall, gaunt man with a scraggly beard standing in the doorway. His face was contorted in anger. Then he disappeared. I ran from the room, my heart pounding in my chest. My girlfriend and I didn't stop talking for the rest of the evening as we told each other all the spooky things we'd experienced. And then we went to bed. It was a cold night, and we slept with the covers pulled all the way up until morning. When we finally dared to look under them, we found the room empty. But then we started hearing strange noises. At first it sounded like footsteps pacing back and forth just outside our room. Then the sound of a rocking chair began swaying back and forth near our bed. We huddled together, frozen in fear. But then we began to laugh hysterically. Was this really happening? Would we soon see a ghost? Or maybe it was all just in our heads. When we finally got up, we looked all over for any sign of movement. But now the room was silent. No rocking chair, only a large ornate mirror hanging above the fireplace. As we stood in front of it, we saw the reflection of a little girl twirling around in a long white dress. She stopped and stared back at us with wide, innocent eyes. And then she vanished. In the meantime, news of mysterious occurrences at the hotel spread to Hollywood, and several celebrities decided to book rooms. Joan Crawford, Bette Davis, Judy Garland, Clark Gable, John Wayne, and Basil Rathbone, the latter 3 of whom were staying in the same room. According to the front desk clerk, they were playing poker when they heard chains dragging metal moans. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into total darkness. They sat there frozen in fear, not daring to move until the lights came back on. Years later, Clark Gable returned to the hotel alone. He told the staff that he had never seen a ghost, but he wanted to spend a night in the room with his friends because he was curious. Well, that night, he didn't hear any moans or see any chains dragging. Instead, he saw a woman sitting in a chair beside his bed sewing. When he approached her, she slowly turned her head to reveal a skeletal face. He stumbled backward and tripped over a footstool, which landed with a loud thud. Startled, the woman dropped her sewing and disappeared. Mr. Gable decided he'd had enough and fled the room. Back in our room, my girlfriend and I were still trying to figure out if the rocking chair was real or not. There was no sound of footsteps in the hallway anymore, but sometimes we thought we could hear whispering. That's when the mirror caught my eye. The little girl was back, but this time she was beckoning to me with her finger. Should I follow her? I hesitated for only a second, but it was enough for her to disappear. As I walked out into the hall, I realized that the floor was littered with keys. Some were old and made of metal. Others were newer and plastic. I picked one up and examined it. It fit the lock perfectly, and while I don't know why or how, I knew this was the key to the little girl's room. Leading my girlfriend down the hall, I inserted the key into the lock and pushed the door open. Inside was a small bedroom just like the one we'd been in the previous night. But something was different. Where the closet should have been, there was now a wall. Where the armoire had stood, there was a fireplace. The whole room had been rearranged. Then I remembered the drawing I'd seen in the lobby the night before. It was a picture of the hotel as it had looked when it first opened in 1928. And suddenly, it all made sense. The room hadn't changed. I had. It was clear that I'd somehow traveled back in time. But that wasn't the only surprise waiting for me. As I turned to leave, I saw a woman sitting in the chair beside the bed sewing. She was pale as death with long, flowing black hair covering her face. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off her. As I reached the door, she spoke. Her voice was a raspy whisper. "Would you like to play a game with me?" Before I could respond, she rose from the chair and glided toward me. I screamed and ran from the room. I found the front desk clerk and told him about the room. He listened patiently, then smiled and said, "Ah, you found Elizabeth's room. She likes to play games with people, but you shouldn't have stayed so long. You shouldn't have spoken to her." What did he mean? Hadn't the woman disappeared? Well, according to the clerk, she hadn't. Elizabeth was trapped in the room and doomed to wander its halls forever. And then I understood. That's why we'd kept hearing the whispers and the rocking chair. Elizabeth had been lonely and she wanted to play with someone. But now I knew that if I wanted to get out of that hotel alive, I had to escape Elizabeth's room. The clock was ticking and I had to make a decision. Stay and become another ghost in the Monte Vista, or flee before it was too late. To be continued in Part 3, which will be published soon, so make sure you stay tuned so you won't miss it. And thanks for watching.